First off, kangaroo are just deer, all right? I mean, okay, they're downs, but before they become leather, they live natural lives in the wild, they're not farmed, and most importantly, they are not endangered or vulnerable or near threatened. They're least concern on the watch list. People assume if an animal is famous and weird, then it's endangered. And while that is almost always true, it's not here. There are more kangaroos than people in Australia, and while there aren't that many people in Australia, kangaroos are quite prone to overpopulation and to dying in mass during summer droughts and fires. They don't roam the streets of our cities like cartoons might suggest, but yeah, just think of them as deer. You know, you go outside of a city into the woods, there's a decent chance you'll see one, and in many instances, they're considered pests. You banned the use of their leather and meat, you'd still have farmers and landowners shooting them, but in a less regulated way that would probably be more problematic because it would mean no controls on how they're killed and so on. So it's for the best that we regulate the culling and use the hides and meat instead of letting them rot in the ground. Like deer. All of what I just said applies to deer. They are deer. They're our deer. But I did not pronounce my R's. My R's. Unlike deer though, kangaroos don't really have predators to naturally help control the numbers. It's so annoying how Australia gets the stereotype as being full of insanely deadly animals. You're the country with bears and wolves and cougars and stuff, man. Like, we have animals that are weirdly poisonous. We have animals you shouldn't step on. But we don't have animals that'll hunt you. That's America. That's you guys. Or it's me guys, because I live in America now, but you're the scary country. Anyway, it's good to use their incredibly low-fat red meat and to use their leather. And as it happens, kangaroo leather is the best boot leather. And I've released a very limited edition Chelsea boot in my kangaroo leather. Boom! This is an ad. I tricked you into watching an ad. But don't click away. I'm making this video an informative and useful look at kangaroo leather boots so that it's still a decent resource after these boots all sell out. And they will sell out very quickly. Link in description below, because the workshop making these is very small. They can only produce 40 pairs, and they're only doing it with me. You'll learn more about these boots from the bootmaker himself in a minute, but so there's long-term value in this video. Here are 5 reasons kangaroo is the best boot leather. Wherever you get kangaroo leather boots from, although you should get them from me. Number 1, just to get the color out of the way here, this happens to be undyed kangaroo leather. You can get it in brown and black and everything else. My collaboration is natural undyed vegetable tanned leather, produced by what is universally considered to be the best tannery for kangaroo leather, Maryam Tannery, who are ironically in Italy. And the first reason this is the best boot leather is because natural vegetable tanned kangaroo is very famous for how beautifully and wonderfully it ages. It's called patina, the beautiful, desirable characteristics of aging. I've been wearing these for just a month, and you can see in this before and after, it's already getting this beautiful patina that will only improve. It's a very rewarding leather to wear that will reflect the journeys that you take it on, which is what you want for your boots. Number 2, kangaroo leather is incredibly strong and durable, especially for its thickness. It's not very thick, but in part because of the kangaroo's lack of sweat pores, unlike cows and such, these skin fibers are really tightly packed and very uniform as well. So let's strip off the content of a better YouTube channel, Rose Anvil. He's a buddy, he doesn't mind. Also, I'm wearing his belt here, buy his belts. There you go, we figured that out. He's a leather worker who ran some tests and found that kangaroo leather takes twice as much weight to tear it, on tear test, and also twice as much weight to puncture it as well. The third reason this is the best boot leather, it retains a lot more of its strength when it's split than cowhide. Pretty much any boot you get, the leather will have been split. On pretty tough boots, the leather is often like 2 to maybe 2.5 millimeters thick, but that's still been split down from much thicker. One source found that when cowhide loses 20% of its thickness, it loses over 95% of its strength. And when you do the same thing to kangaroo, it just loses 50% of its strength. You can make a kangaroo leather boot thinner without losing as much of its strength as you do if you want a similarly thin cow leather boot. Number 4, all that stuff that I said before I got into this list section of the video, for all those reasons I gave, it's a very ethical leather. If, of course, you think such a thing is possible. There are a bunch of reasons people will say one leather is more ethical than another leather that is not just about the fact that you're killing an animal for it, right? Cow hooves, for instance, tend to wreck topsoil, at least in areas where cows are not native. Kangaroos don't. They don't have hooves. The numbers are a bit hard to confirm, but cows produce a good half of the agricultural industry's methane and a huge percentage of just the overall greenhouse gases on planet Earth. Kangaroos produce way less. I saw one source say they produce 12 times less methane, like per kilogram of meat, than cows. They've got different guts. Cows have all those stomachs, you know what I mean? Kangaroos aren't farmed, so no one's like raising forests to raise them. They're running wild and free until, they're killed. And the fifth reason that this is the best boot leather is even with all those advantages over cow, it's not really expensive. These boots are not super cheap because they're very special, and I'm about to discuss why and what's going on in these boots besides the leather. But my point is, if you're looking at a brand that's selling kangaroo leather boots and cow leather boots, like alongside each other, the same model, they're typically about the same price. The kangaroo here, though, is vegetable tan, which is a pricier way of making leather. Cow is more likely to be chrome. But yeah, the price is very comparable, which is surprising for such an exotic and cool leather. Although you shouldn't get Grant Stone's kangaroo boots, you should get these, come on. And that brings us to this Chelsea boot. Of course, for my collab, we had to go with the most Australian of all boots, which is the Chelsea. As an Australian, I can tell you with only a little hyperbole that you will never meet an Australian with boots that are mock toe or cap toe or have laces at all. We just do Chelseas. Once we found out that you can wear boots that don't need laces, like our entire country was like, all right, well, that's it. Why would I mess with laces if I don't have to? Now, the fact that it's a whole cut Chelsea has a lot of consequences. It means it's harder and more expensive to make because you have to find one consistent piece of leather. You can't use smaller pieces of scrap leather. There are no seams under the elastic here. It just gets stitched at the back. And on every other Chelsea on Earth, almost, you'll at least get this stitching here and sometimes like more stitching everywhere else, right? Being whole cut also gives it fewer places for stitching to tear and to fail. Also, many people find it more comfortable, more like one big old sock. Probably a better thing to focus on is that it just looks cleaner. It's an aesthetic thing for a lot of people. And yet, this is not just any whole cut Chelsea boot. I partnered with a small workshop of a half dozen scrappy rogues in the Indonesian city of Bandung, a band of shoemakers who many consider the makers of the world's best Chelsea boots. And we can just pretend that there's such a thing as the best boot for this.
Hai, saya Adi, owner dari Briselblack Bootmaker. Kebetulan tahun 2023 kemarin Nick datang ke tempat kami. Banyak hal yang kami obrolin di situ. Salah satunya kami memutuskan untuk berkolaborasi untuk membuat Chelsea Boots. Dalam pembuatannya, Chelsea Boots kami nggak menggunakan mesin dalam proses crimpingnya. Jadi kami memakai cara tersendiri yang digunakan untuk proses crimping dan lasting. Nah, melalui proses tersebut, Chelsea Boots kami itu dapat memberikan desain yang baik, fitting yang baik, dan juga kenyamanan yang bisa langsung dirasakan pas langsung dipakai.
As Adi said, I was fortunate enough to visit Briselblack in Bandung, and I made this video about the trip that I'll put in the description below if you want to see an interview with him. I've also got another video on these Chelsea boots in a different leather that I got a few years ago. The boot scene down there is really fascinating, totally unique, has its own very specific historical and cultural context. Unlike any other boot you've probably worn, Adi at Briselblack hand lasts and hand welts his boots. It's extremely rare, those two things, hand lasting, hand welting. If you don't know, the last is the foot-shaped mold that you pull the leather over when you're making a boot. It's what turns flat leather into the size and shape of the boot that you're making. Practically every brand does this with machines, but hand lasters will tell you that doing this process by hand gives them more control over the boot and over the leather, helps them better make it such that the leather is stretched in places where the fibers stretch more naturally and more favorably in the direction that it's being stretched. But what all hand lasters will tell you, they'll tell you that hand lasting is the most artistic part of the boot making process. And these Chelseas are also hand welted. Many guys in the boot community prefer to get hand welted boots. It just puts more of a human touch into your boots. But there are practical reasons as well for preferring hand welted boots. When a boot is Goodyear welted, the welt is stitched through a strip of canvas glued under the insole, whereas when it's hand welted, the welt is stitched through the insole itself. And so for this reason, hand welting is more durable. When you get these boots, you can get them in 2 different sizes if you want. You are actually encouraged to take measurements and then they can adjust the last. So for instance, me personally, I have a low instep. My left foot is actually a quarter size bigger than my right. And while nobody on earth offers quarter sizes, Briselblack actually did adjust the last. They did it for me. While we have a particular makeup for this collaboration, like we went with the #1 favorite boot sole of even the most nerdy of boot nerds. This is Taiwan's Dr. Soul. You can customize your Kangaroo boots. If you'd rather have a leather sole or lighter colored elastic or darker elastic, a bright red lining like on my other Briselblack Chelseas, just about anything else you could do. But he ordered this one in especially for me for this collaboration. There's no other boot he'll make you with Kangaroo leather. And here I'm going to talk you out of these boots with the downsides. Number one, while Kangaroo leather is thin and it does stretch with wear, it took about a month of wear before I could convince myself that I didn't get the wrong size. Another downside, if you live in California, legally you cannot buy these. These boots also follow the same rules as most other Indonesian boots, in that they will take 3 to 5 months to be made for you, which in Briselblack's defense is actually a lot less than like a lot of American brands that do made-to-order boots. Nick's Handmade Boots up in the Pacific Northwest is probably the biggest made-to-order operation, and they take well over 6 months, sometimes 9 months to make your boots for you. And lastly, the price of these boots is $700. If you don't know much about boots, that might sound like a lot. If you do know much about boots and about the Indonesian boot scene and the techniques I've discussed here and the leather that we're talking about, you'll know it's a very good price for what you're getting. If this was made stateside or in Canada, be well over $1,000. The link to place your order is in the description below. Apologies if you're watching this video after spring 2025 because this is no longer available, this leather, but I hope this was still useful for you to learn about Kangaroo leather boots and also the importance and rarity of the techniques coming out of Indonesia and some other smaller brands like that. Reach out to him. You'll just want to DM him on WhatsApp or Instagram. That's sort of the way they take orders there. But again, they're very trustworthy and I'm very excited to hear how you guys like these boots.